Okay. I was just saying to Umbra that I really need to get a starting soon screen. So I know no one is probably here yet because I literally just started. Um, but I'll pop over to my stream manager here. And there's an ad starting soon. So, you
Oh,
might as well
ads.
just like wait a minute.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, nice, thanks. I don't have a cat cam today.
Oh.
No cats in convenient places.
I should have been on my char. My bad.
On your char?
I really wish they made like cross-region instances possible.
I know, right?
Because you can be a party and you can chat, so why not?
Exactly. I guess I also should let... I usually pop into the Snowcrow's website. Or into the help desk.
Oh, yeah.
And I plop in the Revenant channel. Okay. I could do a ping, I guess. I'm like scared to do pings in the help desk server. Oh, hey, Eve. Hey, Ray. The most class in Guild Wars 2. Yeah.
Certainly one of the classes of all
Yeah.
time.
Did Jin put up
Oh,
her
hey,
X
Jen.
for joining after you got in the instant?
Oh, yeah, it was after, but we could probably redo instance if you want to be. Want to be in our instance. Wow. Oh, yeah, you're in like Nios right now. Did you just want to be in party or did you want to actually like be in our instance?
How do you do?
Nice. Wow. Okie dokie. Okay, I think we have let the tape roll, as it were. Oh, the goddamn it! There's an ad in 2 minutes. I thought we already had an ad. Okay, I'm just gonna run a 1 minute 30-second ad right now, so that way it will stop, and then we can actually have like
Yeah.
a half hour before the next one happens. Ooh, let me reorient myself so we can all show off our fashion. I guess I should be in the middle so that way it's most optimal framing.
I picked a mushroom head safari because it looks like the Revenant icon.
Oh, it does.
And then I picked the spookiest Sylvari face.
It is a very spooky face. I like the oaken helm. It's really more her hair, is what I think. Her alternative hair, I guess. That's her normal hair. Oh, that's a cool helm too. All the Sylvari stuff is pretty cool.
This one's actually Nightmare Dungeon.
Yeah. I could consider that Sylvari stuff. Nightmare
Yeah,
Dungeon
it
is
is.
Sylvari stuff.
It just
yeah.
it's accessible Sylvari.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh. Ray's been on the Rev Brain Rot for so long and hyperfixating on the trait lines, and very excited for this. Okay. The ad is done. I will now do my announcements, which is that hello, hi, welcome. We're doing another class, profession class. This time it's Revenant. We've already had one on Revenant back in like December, but at this point we're starting to maybe like kind of redo some classes over again because it's always good to just kind of like keep hearing some stuff. And it allows more people to see things live, ask questions live. Yeah, I know there aren't any cats right now. I don't know. None of them are in a convenient spot for me to put a camera on them. I mean, I do have multiple feet of cable here, but I don't want to mess with it right now to try to take it all the way across the room to where Nutmeg might be hiding. Anyhow, Umbra is here from Snowcross to talk to us about Revenant and impart knowledge upon us. Go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I'll have you know I spent at least 5 minutes preparing for this, so yeah,
That's more
prepare
than
to
I
be
did.
blown away. So
He
if
is on
you,
EU, so we
yeah,
can't be in the
that's
same
why I'm not
space.
in the picture right now
Yeah,
with my
but then I can swap
clearly
back.
superior Revenant fashion.
Oh, perfect! You did the
Anyway.
talking emote.
I
So
did.
proud of you.
Hello, there's me. It's not the real me, but you know.
Internet you.
Yeah, if you know anything about me, it's probably that I'm a big Revenant player for the most part. A bit of lore, I guess, is that was actually the my starting point with working with Snowcross. I introduced the Quickness Herald build when it came out, essentially, and started maintaining that on the website, and then took over more and more of Revenant stuff, and then onto other builds as well. But Revenant's always been my true home in a way. So today the goal is to go over sort of everything, but you know, not too much detail. I wasn't planning on reading through everything. Like if you want to read through all the skills and all the traits, you can. We have a decent guide on the Snorkel's website, like an introduction to Revenant. It should be pretty easy to find. Or you can look at the wiki, of course, for every possible skill. There's a lot of info there if you just want to like read up on everything. But the aim is to give you a basic overview of how things actually work without having to read multiple pages.
I will
So,
post it in
yeah.
the chat here. There you go.
You'll have to tell me if I should increase the UI size or not, but I think it looks fine.
It seems okay. Like you could increase it, but yeah, if anyone's having trouble seeing it, just let us know.
Yeah. Shut. So, what's special about Revenant, I suppose, is it's sort of not one of the original core specs. If you want to play Revenant, you have to buy one of the expansions, and with each of Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire and End of Dragons, you get one of the lead specializations, and it kind of comes bundled in. I'm actually not sure if you get it by only buying Secrets of the Obscure. Maybe you get Core Revenant. But in theory, there is sort of no such thing as Core Revenant because you can't play Revenant as a free-to-play player. But it does have some core functionality if you don't equip an elite specialization. So I'll just show some stuff in game for the most part because I don't have a PowerPoint or something. So the main thing about Revenant is the F1 key, which you use to swap between different legendary stances. And the core Revenant, so to speak, has 4 different ones. So you can equip 2 of these at any given time. You can swap them out of combat. Once you're in combat, you can't swap them, just like any slot skill. And the basics is that you only get the skills available to that specific legend. So my only skill selections here is like 1 in each slot, and there's nothing else to pick, really. And these are all the skills I get. And if I want different skills, I have to swap between the 2 selected legends I have, or I have to swap a legend out. So you're kind of limited in a way in what you get, but at the same time, each of these skills are usually pretty stacked with, what they do. And I won't go over everything, but generally you always get like one type of CCA skill on every legend. It just completely depends on which one, like where it's placed on the bar. Shiro has the elite as the CC. Chalice has one of the utilities as a CC. But you'll always have one CC and you'll have a stun break, and it's kind of consistent in that way. You also see stuff like on Shiro, you have a skill that is a stun break, and it's an evade, and it gives endurance, and it removes conditions. So it's kind of like, it does a whole lot, but at the same time, it's kind of expensive to use, because Revenant's key mechanic is the energy pool, and you have 50 energy when you're out of combat, and it goes up to 100 when you're in combat. And you see these arrows on the side here. You can see the ones on the right side. There's 5 of them. That means whenever I'm down on energy, if I use a skill, I'll gain back 5 energy per second. And the main thing to think about there is one type of skill that drains your energy. Each stance will also have one of these. In Shiro, it's the impossible odds, which does a few different things. But in practice, it just slowly drains out your energy while you're using the skill. And aside from the upkeep skills, everything else will basically cost energy. And you'll see like a tooltip number, and that's the energy cost. So this one has 30 energy cost, this one has 30. This one will drain for 6 per second, while it also has a 5 starting cost. And then this elite skill has like a 50 energy cost, so it drains all your energy immediately. As you may notice, there is a bug where it says 49, but that's just the consistency part of ArenaNet, But in practice, this is 50, so let's not worry too much about that. So already you're pretty limited in, you're not really allowed to spam your utility skills too much, but they do generally have a very low cooldown, which is convenient. And when it comes to these upkeep skills, you can just reactivate them whenever you want. They usually don't have a cooldown, which is also pretty convenient. So you can kind of min-max and manage your energy as much as you want. And there are some trait interactions that play into that as well. And then there's also the interaction of swapping a legend. So I've just been using the UI here, but when you actually press the button, you swap, and you have a 10-second cooldown on the skill. And what this will actually do is also trigger sigil effects the same way you would swap a weapon. So this is kind of unique for Revenant. It's the same way as an Elementalist would be swapping attunements and blocking sigils, but Revenants can do that and swap weapons, because we're special. And Revenant didn't actually used to have weapon swap back in the day, but that was quickly added in because it wasn't very fun to play Revenant with only one weapon set.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So that's like the basics. Weapon skills also cost energy, because of course they do. So you have a limited energy pool, and you have to spend them on weapon skills and your slot skills, essentially. And then whenever you're running out of energy, you can just swap legends, and you have 50 back, and you can spend those again on something else. Or, keep doing weapon skills, usually. And there's also a trait we can come back to on that. But usually, you'll gain 50 energy back whenever you swap a legend. You can also do this by swapping the UI, you'll get 50 energy back immediately. So, swapping legend, 10-second cooldown, and you get 50 energy back. So that kind of incentivizes you to spend all of your energy and then swap legends, and then you can spend all of your energy again until you have it off cooldown, and then you can, repeat that pattern. So you don't really have to save up or wait for your energy to regenerate too much. It kind of depends, though. So when it comes to Revenant, since we're very limited in what skills we can actually choose, that obviously is a significant downside because you don't really get to pick your like primary damage utility and your primary defensive utility. And like, let's say I wanted to have impossible odds for increased damage, and I also wanted to have the stability skill on Jalis. I don't really get to do that. I have to pick these two legends, and if I wanted, let's say, Ventari for a projectile mitigation, then I couldn't do all of those things at the same time. So you're kind of forced to mix and match, and that's the primary downside here. But obviously you do get a pretty powerful set of tools whenever you have a legend equipped. So they can be pretty good, but the main thing about Revenant is it's very good at doing specific things at one time, but it can't do everything all of the time. So something like a fireband is what I would consider something that can like always cover every mechanic possible, but Revenant kind of has to prepare ahead of time. Like, let's say you need stability and projectile mitigation, but you also need Boon Strip, and you have to pick two of these things to deal with, because you can't do them all at the same time. Sort of. Depends how creative you get with equipment and stuff. But yeah. What Revenant also has pretty conveniently done is each trait line is kind of predetermined as to what it does. So you have a trait line like Salvation, which is kind of tied to the center stance, and all it really does is like increase your healing output in different ways. And you have the same with the Devastation trait line, which is kind of thematically tied to Shiro, and this focuses entirely on power damage. So if you're playing a power build, you'll want this trait line. If you're playing a heal build, you'll want this trait line, and so on. So it's very easy to just plug and play what kind of things you want in your build. And then I would say the other primary strength of Revenant, at least at the moment, is that it's kind of the most accessible boon provider in a way. It's very easy to cover boons for your allies on a Revenant, like a Herald especially is very popular at the moment, and before that Renegade was pretty much the staple for Alacrity.
I loved Delacrin.
Oh yeah, they are very easy to do the basics of, but they also have a high skill ceiling if you really enjoy playing at the highest level, of course. So it's kind of a spec that everyone can play pretty well, but it also requires having some good knowledge of the class if you want to try and, cover all the different mechanics that you could possibly do. But generally, you do have access to sort of every tool you'd want, except for porting people, I guess, like a Mesmer. So
Yeah.
not quite there, but it's pretty good. Oh yeah, and another thing is you don't get
Just
any.
use a white mantle portal device.
Yeah. You also don't get any racial skills. There's probably not much of a reason other than you're kind of limited to the stance skills. But the Revenant, like in lore, Revenant is also, you've sort of been to the mists, so in a way you're dead, and you've come back from the mists, so you're sort of not, maybe you're a different kind of entity entirely. Who knows?
Yeah.
We
You
can
was
make up all
wondering if
sorts of
there's
reasons.
a group stun break.
Group stun break. I don't think Revenant has that actually.
Yeah, I don't think
The
I do
closest thing you
either.
really get is,
Because stab usually
you
comes from Jalis. I don't know.
yeah, you can grant a good amount of stability, but I don't think there's any way to stun break allies on it, unfortunately. So that's a bit, you'll have to play like a fireband or a ranger or something for that, I suppose. That is a very like rare thing to have, though. I think. I don't think every
Gaze of
class gets that.
Darkness is, I think, only for yourself.
Yeah, so you'll have a stun break on everything, but the Herald skill is. Can I even see it here? This one. Well, it's the flip skill for this one. But Yeah, it'll only stun break yourself. So there's no stun break for allies, as far as I know.
Rite of the Great Dwarf doesn't say anything in the narrative about stun breaks.
It doesn't.
But it has break stun on it.
Yeah, because that is your stun break on the kit, right? But
Okay, so that's your
I'm
personal.
pretty sure it doesn't apply to allies. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Feel free to test it out, of course.
And thank you, Janerick. He is a very, very cute little baby.
Oh, you have it the cat cam now. Amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, Lancey decided to hop in the sidecar. So, well, he wanted the muffin that I was eating, and
Fair
I
enough.
told him no, and then he just laid down right there.
Okay,
Yeah, you can
onto
cleanse
some
if
more.
it's fear.
Oh yeah, and you also have a good amount of resistance generation on both the center stance and the demon stance, so you
Yeah,
can kind of
lots
mitigate mechanics
resolution.
pretty well. Yeah, and cleansing especially is pretty easy on Herald, so that's usually not an issue. But yeah, there is kind of the pick and choose type of utility for Herald, unfortunately, but most places that isn't really a big issue. I don't think there's a lot of encounters where you really struggle to do what is expected of a healer. But there are fights like Harvest Temple CM, of course, where there's kind of a lot going on, where it might not be the best choice, because you can't really, you don't have a teleport, you can't portal people,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But that's like the very niche use cases, I would say. Like generally, raids and strikes in open world, you can do it all, I would say.
Oh, hey, you.
Hello.
Let's
There's
see.
no way Eve would ever miss a Revenant class.
Yeah.
Oh, I tried so hard to get here on time.
You made it. Let's see. Where were you? Where did you leave off, Umbra? Where we were
Right.
talking about stuff.
There's some more downsides to talk about, unfortunately.
Okay.
So at least at least in PV, because that's, I assume most people focus on that. Like if you're playing raids mostly, you have some slot skills that you never really use, which kind of feels bad that you have to take this whole set of slot skills and you only use this one skill on Shiro, for example. Because the impossible odds on Shiro is really powerful. It gives you like follow-up strikes whenever you hit a target. But these other skills are more like utility and mobility, and they don't really deal any damage. So you never really use them, which, they're very cool skills, but there's not really any good application for them in like a DPS rotation or something like that. So specifically like Shiro, you only have one skill you really use. In Malix for Condi, you only have one skill you really use, and the others are more utility focused. So that's kind of, how should you say, a less fun part of Revenant, I guess. But that mostly applies to, I would say, like if you're trying to optimize damage output and stuff. Because the utility can be really useful everywhere else, basically. So I would say like something like a Power Herald is probably one of the more fun builds in like PvP, because you get to dash around all over the place, and you're like one of the best classes to like roam around, because you can increase your movement speed with traits and you can dash all over the place. So it really depends on the game mode, but in PvE it might feel a bit more stationary and a bit more one-sided, I suppose. And then lastly, if you enjoy like theory crafting and build crafting, one big downside with the Revenant is that since each trait line is kind of like compartmentalized, you have like this is power damage, this is Conley damage, and so on. You don't really have any good hybrid builds. And it goes, I'll get to the weapons, of course, but the weapons also usually just focus on one aspect at a time. So there's not really any good way to do hybrid damage. And it's obviously not very common in other specs either, but hybrid builds can be fun. It's nice to theory craft. something like a Reaper is pretty cool that it can apply a significant amount of conditions through applying chill, for example. And that's a pretty, it's kind of a meme on Revenant. You have a trait like that, which applies Torment when you chill, but you don't have the output, sufficient to make it like an actual good build.
Oh, you don't have like enough chill.
Yeah, you need more chill. However, if you play World vs. World, it's usually pretty good because you get more colonies on the target, which is like you're kind of bothering them more and forcing them to use cleanses on conditions you might not focus that much on. So it can be useful there, but in a way you can kind of make a chill build work in competitive modes because chill is really annoying.
Yes.
But I wouldn't really focus too much on the damage aspect of this trait. But it's a good trait in theory, at least. But yeah, that's my big gripe with it, that I can't make like a hybrid Revenant. If they give Spear some more love, maybe. But yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to try out like any of the spears. How was Rev Spear?
I didn't play it a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was interesting, but it kind of focused on only really dealing damage with one skill, which is interesting. Like skill 5 is like throw the spear into the ground, and it has a very low cooldown, and you keep using it, and it has a stacking buff. So it's interesting, but it didn't really feel that like interactive, I would say.
Yeah.
But I mean, it can be decent. It might be a good contender for a Condi build. We'll have to see, because the Condi builds are pretty good on Revenant.
And those are mainly mace axe and short bow.
Yeah. So we've gone over like the very basics, and I figured I'd show some of the traits that you want to focus on if you want to make your own build, or if you just want to understand how the builds work.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds
So
nice.
I'll just quickly go over each trait line. There's a lot of traits, obviously, and most of them don't really matter. So in Corruption, you'll always have this if you're playing Condi. The first trait here is more Torment damage. We'll take that. This one is more Condition duration. We'll take that. And this one is applying conditions when you Legend swap, which doesn't seem like a lot, but since you'll be swapping basically off cooldown, you'll get a good damage boost from this. And there are some other cool traits here, like this one. You gain resistance when you Legend swap, and resistance will heal you every second. So it basically becomes like another regen effect on you. And then you can have another trait here, which makes resistance give you reduced damage. And then you have this trait, which applies resistance to you when you use like a demon skill. So quickly you can see like good synergy with resistance and Revenant. And this is actually what we use on the handkite build. There's a few different variants to it, but the handkite build looks like this, for example. And although you don't really use Malix, and you don't really use this trait, you have a lot of resistance on Ventari as well. So this build essentially just maintains resistance and regeneration and protection, and you can just stand in the hands and not care.
How many stacks of hands have you stood in?
I mean, well, right now you don't want to stand in more than 5, I would say.
5, yeah.
But because they did change how damage reduction works, and it used to stack additively, so you could get more than 100%, and that was pretty fun. And that also, since you had resistance, you wouldn't be affected by fear, so you could stand in the statue at the edge of the Demos platform, which usually fears you. So that was fun. If you messed up once, you were like completely dead, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like the main thing about this trait line. It's like damage, damage, also damage, or you can go like the defensive route. And I mean, there's the meme chill trait, and then this trait will send conditions to enemies when you Legend swap, which is really nice in maybe like something like Slothosaur. If you for some reason play a Condi build there, it can be really nice. I sometimes use it on Solace Horror if I'm tanking, because it's just kind of a free cleanse, and it actually increases your damage a bit. But you are still giving up a bit of damage from this trait. But it can be nice. And then lastly, this trait is kind of interesting, because it gives you more, it says pips, and the game doesn't really explain what a pip is. but the pips are the you can see on our energy bar the arrows that like increase your energy. So you get one more whenever you use an upkeep skill. So if I'm maintaining the skill, you get one more pip, which essentially means it costs 5, and you have that. In short, it makes it so that you're not actually losing energy, but you're just at a standstill. But it also applies torment to you, so it's kind of like a double-edged sword. But you know, it can be fun if you find some like practical application of it. I think it's like something AFK farmers used on Rev, but since it applies torment, you can also give them might, so they would hurt themselves more. There's many like ways to utilize these traits, but generally you don't really see use for it. Maybe if you're playing a heal build, you don't really have to care about the torment, and if that energy helps you, I guess you can do it. That's a bit niche, I think. Okay, but enough of that. The power trait line. This one is really straightforward. This trait gives you more damage. This trait gives you more power. This trait gives you more damage. So that's really all there is to it. And that's... I have a bit of a grudge against this trait line because it used to be a lot more fun, but right now it's just damage, 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 and you don't really worry about the rest.
Yeah.
Because this used to be... They used to give ferocity
yeah.
to allies, but it doesn't anymore. So now it's just
missed
useless.
that. I honestly, I
Yeah.
missed the profession
I mean,
specific
it does
buffs.
give
fun.
fury, but you don't really care about that fury. You have other sources for it. But Dance of Death is still kind of a relevant trait if you're struggling to survive. You do apply vulnerability a lot if you're on a power build, so it can be a decent sustain source, but I wouldn't take it for any kind of strike or raid really. So mainly just these 3 traits. The other bottom traits are just synergized with Dance of Death. This one is useless, so yeah, don't worry about that.
Everyone gets to see Eve's golem logs.
Use the console to begin. If you have any inquiries,
If you want an example of what are you practicing right now, Vindy? Yeah, Vindy.
Okay, maybe we'll have to review the logs afterwards. Okay, so healing trait line. This one actually has a lot of options, so I'm not really going to look at each one. But generally, like, you can get like a healing modifier when you swap legends, so it also incentivizes swapping legends. And there's a few different ones. This one will heal whenever you use one of your slot skills. And this one will give you damage reduction whenever you heal someone, including yourself. So this is what we use
Oh
on the
yeah,
hand
that's
build.
really fucking nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so it's
just leave
just
that on all
free
the
damage
time.
reduction. Yeah. I think it applies on region now, which it didn't used to, which is a bit weird, but you know, it's free healing, free damage reduction. Really nice on hand kiting or whatever else you need damage reduction for. And then here's a trait line you'll never really see at the moment. Retribution is more like a kind of a utility damage reduction trait line, but it doesn't really have as much damage reduction as the other ones. But you do have like a passive heal whenever you use upkeeps, or you can give yourself might whenever you have resolution, and it synergizes with another trait that gives you resolution and such. So it can be nice, but it generally doesn't really... It kind of overlaps with what Herald does at the moment. We used to run this on Heal Herald, because it would give you might every second, and Herald has a trait that gives might to allies whenever you give yourself a boon. So it would essentially just pump might to allies. But now that's sort of built in. So we don't really use this trait line at all. You'll probably see it in like PvP sometimes, because it has like a random dome whenever you use a healing skill. And this can be nice, but it doesn't really apply in PvE whatsoever. So you generally don't really see this. You don't really see this one.
Does that work
and then
for,
lastly,
like if I was tanking on SH? Aren't
Oh,
there
yeah.
projectiles that get thrown by the...
yeah, but I
Worms.
wouldn't consider this worth taking just for that skill, compared to like the whole value you get from like an entire different trait line. We'll look at invocation in a moment, but yeah,
Okay.
I generally wouldn't say it's worth swapping if you need that mitigation. I mean, there could be some use case for it. It's definitely not a bad thing to take
Yeah,
if you're
steadfast is
trying
pretty
to
nice.
survive, of course.
Yeah.
But I think there are better options still.
Okay.
So, you know, it could be a decent secondary trait line on like Condi Quick Herald if you're trying to be really tanky, but otherwise I wouldn't worry so much because the worms aren't really as big of a threat as they seem. I feel like they do hurt when you have a lot of stacks, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, the last one is Invocation, and you've kind of seen a theme with the other ones here. Like this is the Malek straight line, this is the Centaur straight line, this is the Shiro straight line, and then this one is the Jalis straight line, right? And then lastly, this one isn't really tied to a straight line. It's just like generally Rev stuff. And you actually see this on every Rev build at the moment, which makes it a pretty good straight line. I think the only build that doesn't take it at the moment is like Heal Herald takes it preferably, but you can swap it out. And the reason it's very good is because you just have these general damage modifiers, and the Grandmaster traits are what really define it. So the top one here is like a packet of damage and some kind of effect whenever you swap legends, and it'll change depending on the legend. It's a bit like the Arcane Elementalist trait, which does something based on your attunement. So this one essentially just gives you more damage whenever you swap legends. So it's kind of like a synergy with this straight line. Like you apply Condis whenever you swap legends. So if you swap to like Glint, you'll apply burning, even more burning since you already have this trait. So it's kind of a nice synergy and just makes the act of legend swapping even more powerful. And then there's the charged mist trait, which you usually see on Renegade, because Renegade is very energy hungry. You'll get more energy when you swap to a legend if you're below a threshold. It's kind of like it might seem confusing at first, but essentially if you're below 10 energy, we're at 5 now, and then I swap legends with F1. If I was in combat, I would get 25 more energy. Maybe we should spawn a golem and show it off. Okay, just quickly like get into combat with very little energy, then swap, but then I have suddenly like a ton more energy because this trait will just allow me to use even more skills that I want to use, which is very nice. So below 10 energy, I can swap again, and then I have 75, and it just keeps increasing, of course, because I didn't use anything else. But what if I swap without being below 10 energy? Then I just get 50, which, I mean, there's nothing negative about it, but it kind of messes up your rotation if you're doing like a renegade rotation. But it's a very powerful trait, and this has been nerfed like over and over in PvP because it's really good. And then the final Grandmaster here is, it essentially just makes Fury twice as strong, and Fury gives you 25% crit chance. Now it gives you 50, because why not? 50% crit chance.
Holy shit.
It's kind of ridiculous, but that's usually why you'll see this on a power build, because it's just, you know, at 25% crit chance, it's just so many stats in theory. So that makes it really good. It has some like other applications too, like when you swap legends, you remove a condition, or you can like get stability and healing whenever you break a stun, stuff like that. So generally the traits you take are like the damage one, and then you'll take this trait because it gives a boon to allies whenever you swap a legend. And then depending on your build, you have one of these three. And they're all being used in different damage builds at the moment. So power builds will use this one, Renegade builds use this one, and then Condi Herald use this one. Because Condi Herald doesn't really have as much energy costs because of the glint stance, but we'll look at that in a moment, of course. So that's all the core trait lines and like the basics of those. But what about the elites? So it kind of gets more complicated here because the elites do a whole lot of things. But I'll go over the ones I enjoy. The first one here is in Herald. You have Rising Momentum, which gives you 5% movement speed for each point of upkeep. So that essentially means if you're like
You can go
using your
really
Impossible
fast.
Bloods, you get 6 stacks. And this one actually doesn't overlap with Swiftness, so it actually adds to it. So if you have Swiftness and Impossible Odds on, which also is a movement speed increase, and then 6 stacks of these, I think you're very close to super speed in combat, which is really nice. So I usually like using this on a DPS Herald build, or like if the boons aren't too important on the quickness build, I'll use this just to move around a lot easier. It's much easier to avoid mechanics when
is
you
fun.
have that extra burst of speed.
Wow, speedy.
Yeah. And then Herald does have a lot of other nice traits. Usually you'll see this one recommended because it gives more boon extension. There's kind of a lot to get into with Herald's F2 skill. But it practically has an effect based on your legend. And in Glent, it'll extend boons of everyone in your party. So this trait is nice because it increases the duration of that, just more boons. And then this trait here, Elder's Respite, is really nice because it increases the power of your regen, basically. It's just kind of like a healing modifier, but it only applies to the regen. But you shouldn't use this if if you have a healer, it doesn't really matter because their regen will overlap anyway. But if you don't have a healer, this can be really nice to just keep people alive a bit better. And this trait here, shared empowerment, is kind of why Herald is so broken at the moment. Like the quickness every second that we'll get to is pretty good, but this trait essentially gives might to everyone whenever you give yourself a boon. So don't even have to give someone else a boon to activate this trait.
Sounds like maintaining 25 stacks is pretty
Yeah.
trivial with that.
So in practice you're pumping out 1 might per second, and you'll get very close to 25 on the DPS or quickness builds, and like on the heal build it's basically free.
Yeah.
So we always take this one on every Herald build, regardless, because the other two aren't really valuable, except for the Handkite build, maybe. But I will still take this trait just in case you happen to
Yeah.
apply might to someone. And then the main attraction for Herald is this trait at the moment, which has been reworked
Multiple
somewhat
times,
recently.
right?
Yeah. So quickness used to be on this trait, but it's not anymore. Now it's on this one, and what it does, what makes Herald so good right now is whenever you meet the upkeep threshold of 6, which is most upkeep skills, you'll start granting quickness, and it applies every second. So you'll see this quickness just keeps increasing, because it also gives you a ton of extra boon duration based on how much power you have. So as long as you're just maintaining an upkeep, and like when you run out of energy, you just swap legends and use another upkeep, and you'll just keep applying quickness, and you can cap out quickness to 30 seconds pretty easily just by playing Revenant. And you can also see my might stacks are like crazy high right now just because of this trait,
Yeah.
which is like, it's kind of unfair that we have this right now. And it's kind of surprising that we haven't seen any nerfs to it, because it's also 600 radius, which is I don't think anything else has any higher radius than that. 600 is pretty long range.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have like an easy comparison, but 600, you can stand pretty far away. You can maybe handkite a bit offensively and also give quickness to people with 600 radius. So it's really good. And it also heals, because why not? It just heals allies too, because it was supposed to be like a healing trait, I think. Yeah. So you heal allies, you give them quickness, you give them might, you get free concentration, and it's 600 radius, so you don't really have to care about your positioning at all.
So 600 radius is. Oh, you can't see. That's right. My Blish head does not get streamed on here. Okay.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we're where Tracy, where that tablet is, to me, is 600.
That's 600, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite large.
And then 600 the other direction too, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah. So that's his 600 radius. So like, yeah, I can be right here, and oh well, Jen's not in my radius right now. Now you are. Yeah, everyone is within range. Even though they're pretty spread out. That's really nice.
Yeah. And we can talk quickly about the other traits, but like in general, they're not too relevant anymore. This one, Draconic Echo, used to be the main thing with Herald before the quickness was given to it, because you would essentially give more boons. Whenever you used like the Herald skills, the passives would last a bit longer. Now it also has like a bit of a bonus effect, but it's not really super relevant. You can use it on the Condi build for like 1k more DPS or something, but it's not really that interesting. And then there is a power oriented trait as well, which seems pretty strong, but it doesn't stack that well with other power modifiers, and it's very difficult to play optimally with, because it kind of wants you to constantly upkeep things, which makes it very energy hungry, while also wanting to use your energy on weapon skills and stuff, right? So it's like, how much do you want to min-max your energy without messing up, basically? And it's not even that much DPS, because Herald doesn't really do that much damage compared to everything else. So a full DPS Herald build is like, I think you can maybe get to 40k with both greatsword and swords, but that's not like, it's not really overwhelmingly good or anything. And then you lose the quickness and, you know, constant might application and stuff. So why bother, you know? But that's the basics of Herald. We can look a bit at the skills as well afterwards. Actually, maybe we should just look at them right now. So Herald gets the Dragon Stance. I'm sure most people are familiar. What they did with this is essentially like Revenant's answer to Signets on other professions. So you don't actually get anything by having these equipped, but once you flip one over, you get the passive effect, which is like sort of what a Signet would do. And each one gives you a boon, except for F2, which gives you a different effect. And it also costs a bit of upkeep to maintain these, but they don't actually have an energy cost just to activate. So you can have multiple of these, and if you have enough of them, your energy will start draining, and you can give quickness, of course. And they give one type of boon each, which makes Herald give like a ton of boons automatically. And then if you have too many of them open, of course, your energy will run out pretty quickly. But, you know, lots of boons, lots of fun, and all the skills do quite a lot of things as well. So 2 of them are mainly like damage oriented. This is an AoE damage with some condies on it. This is like a melee burst in front of you, which also gives you a damage buff. It buffs both power and condi damage, so it's like you always want to use that. Then this one here, tied to the Fury Facet, is a stun break. It'll apply vulnerability and reveal and blindness, and it's also 600 radius, of course. So you don't really use that too much in raids and stuff, but it's a really nice stun break that you can just have on hand. So it's very nice just for that. And there's the elite skill is the one that gives protection, which also costs the most because protection is expensive. Reactivating it will give you, it's just mainly like a bit of damage, and also it's a CC with a launch, and it gives super speed to allies. So, you know, more speed, more fun. So as you can see, each skill kind of does a lot. And then there's the heal, which is, you know, why Herald is one of the more tanky specs there are, because it'll invert damage for 3 seconds. So you can stand, like, I'm not sure if it works on the Golem AoE field, but it means you can tank a lot of mechanics for free without really worrying. But it does have a long cooldown.
Yeah, several things, including severe shockwave.
Yep.
Deimos Mind Crush.
Yep.
Uh,
Anything that deals damage, basically.
yeah, anything
VG
that would
greens.
put you in immediate downstate,
Yeah.
right?
But the Sabir, like the corner mechanic on Sabir, isn't actually damage, so that won't work. So don't use it there.
Oh, what is that one? If it's not
It's
damage,
it just puts you in downstate.
just put that. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
But AD works because AD is like, if you would die, then you don't die.
Okay.
But this one is just damage
Maybe
inversion.
it's damage, yeah.
But it can heal you to full health and basically keep you at full health for a while, which it's really nice. But yeah, you'll generally want to use these 2 skills for damage on every Herald build. We don't really use F2 that much because it used to apply, well, all the facets used to apply to 10 targets. Now they only apply to 5. So this one isn't as powerful anymore. What it does in Glint is increase the boon duration, the incoming boon duration on allies. So it doesn't really care. It doesn't care about the boon duration cap. It still increases the boons. but that's not too valuable to give to only like 3 other people in your squad, because if you have a healer, they don't really care about their incoming boon duration. It's mainly for the DPS players. So it's not a ton of value to maintain this. So we usually just use this for boon extension, or you can use it in a different stance for other effects. The most notable ones are probably in Chalice, where it gives stability, 2 stacks of stability, and then in Shiro it'll boon strip, and it does deal some damage, but it's not really worth using for the damage. But the boon strip can be nice on like VG, for example. You'll have that on hand, and you don't have to swap to, you don't have to change to Malix just to boon strip, right? Depends how much boon strip do you want, actually. But yeah. The main thing about Glint is to kind of micromanage your energy a bit, because you don't want to run out, and you do want to use the skills, but you also want to make sure you're draining energy so that you give quickness. So it can be a bit difficult, but in practice what you'll want to do is like maintain the elite one, and then either F2 or the Facet of Darkness for Fury. Usually it's best to give the Fury and Protection together, so that those are usually the boons you want. And that'll drain quickness for free, and you just maintain those until you can swap again. And then usually use the elite for damage, of course. So that's like the basics in Glint. You'll use these 2 for damage, and then you maintain these until you can swap, essentially. It's like a very basic usage of Glint to also grant quickness, I would say. And then Herald doesn't really do that much else in the other stances. You don't really have that much effect other than the F2, because nothing else is available. So you can maintain the F2 for upkeep if you wanted, but that essentially makes all the upkeep skills very expensive on the other legends. So there's usually not really any application for that, I would say. It does, for example, in Chalice, it gives damage reduction, but I wouldn't say it's that significant. You can use it though, like if you know something big is coming, like on HGCM, you might want to use like Right, and then have this open for like a moment, and you'll give quite a bit of damage reduction, but otherwise it's not really worth maintaining all the time. So yeah. It's like a very, very quick, basic guide to Glint, I guess. It might seem complicated, but I want to say it's a bit easier than it seems. But yeah. It's very fun though. It's
the
definitely
flip-over
been my
mechanic is
favorite.
neat.
Yeah. So yeah. Very basic. Use the passive, your energy drains, you get boons for free, and then you use the active. You stop draining and you do fancy stuff. Yeah.
You get to yeet people with Glint active.
Yeah. It is pretty fun actually.
And she screams
Especially
very
yeah,
loud.
if you're playing with the friends and they're fighting like a veteran, and you can yeet the veteran away and annoy them. Yeah. Never happened to me, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the previous best elite spec, which is Renegade. It does have a special place in my heart. It did get a rework recently, so that each skill type here is like a new skill type. It's usually what they do with elite specs. So here you'll have like a summon. You summon your cat friends, and then they salute you, and then they disappear. So that's very whelming, I would say. The animations used to be longer, but you know they're funny. They do stuff. So whenever you cast one of these, the next one within a few seconds will be an instant cast. So you can use it during other skill casts, which is to say you can just use them very fast, basically. But yeah, they also have different effects. We don't have to talk too much about them, but the main one is like the CC one has been known to like make Revenant one of the stronger CC classes, I suppose. They changed it to only daze for 2 seconds instead of like spamming daze on the target, but now it has a bonus Defiance Break anyway, so it's still really good. So this is like huge big bar damage. And then the other ones are like, this is damage, and the order kind of depends for the Condi build. For power, you only use this one. And then the elite we don't really talk about because it doesn't really do any damage at the moment. But it does have a good amount of lifesteal to allies. So if you want to help your allies survive a bit, you can use this. And maybe they'll lifesteal their way to success. Hopefully. But I would say the main attraction to Renegade is the orders from above, the F4 skill, which is how you grant alacrity. And it's a very simple skill. You just press it, and it does the thing, and you don't really have to do anything else. And that's how you grant boons on Renegade. Which is what makes it like pretty approachable, but this skill has a 20-second cooldown, and since you grant yourself alacrity, it'll be 16. And 16 seconds with a 10-second legend swap doesn't really line up. So you always just have to kind of, you have to make up as you go. Like, how am I gonna deal with my energy right now? Because if you use it in one stance, the next stance you'll have more energy, and then you might want to use it again in Kala stance, in Renegade stance. And then if it's not off cooldown, you might have to use it in your other stance. And you kind of have to improvise a bit with your energy management. And I would say that's what makes Kandi, like Renegade, pretty difficult, because it's really energy hungry, and you have a set rotation, and you have to,
tight.
yeah, you really have to like know when the skill is coming off cooldown to properly pull it off. Otherwise, you won't have as much energy if you miss the charge miss timing and stuff. So that can be pretty difficult. On the power build, it's not as much of a punishment, because you can kind of pair skills up to know how much the energy cost is going to be. But that's like a big thing about Renegade, is like, oh, I have this much energy and the skill is coming off cooldown. What do I use? You kind of have to know the energy cost of each skill to properly improvise it, which is I guess that's a bit high level to like remember the energy cost of every skill, but that's kind of what you have to do if you want to play it like absolutely perfectly. But as a basic skill, it's very easy to just give alacrity, because this will be off cooldown again. Assuming you have enough boon duration, it'll be off cooldown again the next time you have to use it. So it just kind of plays itself, I would say. And then the other two skills here are pretty good too. The F2 skill just gives might based on your the Kala's forever stacks you get, and you get that from just hitting enemies, and you'll always have 5 stacks for free, because it's not really an interesting mechanic. So this one just gives you might based on how many stacks you have. It gives allies might too, of course. So you can use this in your Renegade rotations to give might, which is pretty nice. But usually you just care about the alacrity, or you just deal damage, of course. And then F3 is like maybe more of the fun skill, because it's like a ton of projectiles that deal a lot of damage. But it's kind of short-lived. It's not really a huge part of your damage in the end, but it looks cool. It's very fun. And they recently changed this to have the projectiles hit closer together, so they all will hit on a small target, which makes Renegade a tiny bit better than it was before. So yeah, did we look at the traits? No, we didn't. Okay. This trait, more bleeding duration. This trait, more bleeding damage. This trait, more condition damage. Done. Okay. There's also this trait, which you need if you're trying to give people sufficient alacrity. It'll increase the duration of this skill. So the tooltips are kind of confusing, because it's like 4 stacks of alacrity for 2 seconds. But that's like only half the necessary duration. So like, do you need 100% boon duration? No, you just take this trait, and then it'll have 6 stacks of alacrity for 2 seconds. So now you need like 35, 40%-ish boon duration, and it'll be good. And that's pretty nice, because Renegade used to need like 80% or more. And that was really painful to build. You needed like full Sally almost, which some people really like for some reason. But not the best for damage. They also changed this trait recently. It used to grant you might just by hitting enemies. Now it just heals you, and it doesn't heal like a ton, but it heals based on any type of damage. So if you're playing a Condi build and Condis are constantly ticking, it's pretty good healing. And it also increases how many missiles you get from F3. So if you really like F3, you can play with this trait, and you'll get more projectiles. So yeah, Renegade also has some passive fury to allies. It's like 50% uptime by default, which is nice. And then you have a bonus 33% crit chance by default, as long as you're not using your dodges. So on Renegade you kind of never want to dodge, especially on a power
Hmm.
build, which can be a bit like you're playing it a bit dangerously if you don't use your dodge. You have to like play it really clean and walk out of everything perfectly, or you can use like a sword 3 for example to dodge stuff, but it can be quite risky. Sword 3 is very good on Samurag though. If you get the green, you'll be all over the place and everyone will be scared. So yeah, I didn't talk about weapons, but we'll get there. The third one is Vindicator, which came with End of Dragons. This one is really weird as well. It's a bit like Herald, where if you're not on the uh, elite specific stance, you don't really have that much. You have like a skill that gives you endurance, so you can dodge again, because the Vindicator dodge is like a special dodge, and it deals damage instead of just being a dodge. But that means you want to dodge all the time, as opposed to Renegade, where you don't want to dodge.
You're now
So,
suddenly
you
a
know,
daredevil.
Revenant makes a lot of sense. Do you want to dodge? I don't know. Maybe. Yes. So on other legends, it doesn't really do much. It just gives you endurance, so you can dodge more. But it also buffs the next. I think you can trade it so that it buffs the next dodge or something. Yeah. So it's good to use on a DPS build if you have the energy for it, but you usually don't have the energy for it all the time. But then when you're in the Alliance stance, which is the one you get with Vindicator, you have another skill which flips all of your slot skills over to a different color. And what does that mean? Well, each of these skills do they have their normal Revenant utility. They do a bunch of stuff, and then you can flip them over to do a different kind of stuff. Yes. So the red ones are like offensive skills, like you want to run in and engage, and you want to deal damage and stun enemies and stuff. And then if you're on the blue one, you just want to escape the situation. You dodge back. You can heal. You can stun break yourself. Yeah. The blue ones are like super defensive skills. While the red ones are like super offensive skills. And if you're playing the center raid, you never really use the blue ones unless it's like, oh shit, the healer died. I need to heal myself. Then you might use the blue ones, because this one doesn't cost anything to swap to, and it also heals you. So it's like you can use this freely if you want, but you won't have access to the more damaging skills for a little while, which is fine because they don't really do that much damage anyway. But this skill, for example, is really nice because it gives you endurance and it gives you quickness. So if both your supports die, you can use this to give yourself quickness, and then you can swap to this and give yourself some healing, or something like that. So there's a lot of skills to go through, and I'm not gonna really bother because you never really use them that much. You might use like the dash for a bit of damage, or like just to drain your energy a bit. And there's like a tiny CC and a stun break on it, so it's not necessarily the most interesting stance, but it has a lot of skills if you like a lot of skills. If you play Elementalist, you might like it. The main thing about Vindicator is the dodge, which is pretty cool. And you want to trade the dodge with one of the Grandmaster traits. So this one, more damage, and who doesn't like more damage? You get a damage buff after you dodge, basically, and it does. The dodge itself deals more damage, of course. Then you have this one where you grant boons to allies. You get protection and might, which is pretty nice if you want to play like a more supporty or like a more open world focused build. It might be really useful because you don't really have that many boon sources when you're not playing Herald. And then lastly, this one will just increase your outgoing healing after you dodge, and the heal will give the dodge will give barrier and healing. So this kind of suggests that Vindicator is like a decent healer because you have all the blue skills which heal, and you can go Ventari, and you'll have a ton of healing. But the reason you don't see a Vindicator heal build is because there's no access to quickness and alacrity for allies. You have
Big
this skill which
Sag.
you get quickness for yourself, but you don't give it to anyone else. So that's why you don't see any heal Vindicator. Maybe in the future it'll get a boon.
Fingers crossed. I think
Yeah.
that would be fun.
The other traits are mainly like supporting your playstyle your chosen playstyle, I suppose. You get like a damage increase on your dodge when you use F2. It's usually what you want. And then this one is just a damage modifier when you don't have full endurance. So on Renegade, you have more crit chance when you're full, and this one you have more damage if you're not full. So you want to keep dodging, basically. And that's basically Vindicator. It only really has a power build because nothing else deals condition damage here. The only conditions is on the spear, which is like a tiny amount of torment. But yeah, that's basically Vindicators like that. The go-to power build. You can jump around and have fun. So yeah, that's a very long-winded walkthrough through everything, all of the skills and traits. But we haven't looked at weapons, and those are probably a bit more interesting. So usually on power you'll see sword or two swords because swords are pretty good. They're like the most consistent damage, I would say, and they're a bit higher damage than greatsword. I'll spawn a golem for this so I can just show you a bunch of the skills. So the sword skills are like pretty straightforward. You kind of just have AoE damage on some, so the skill 5 is just like single target damage. You don't really use skill 3 that much because it's like a long cast and it evades you and it sets you in place, and you might not want to be stuck in one spot, especially like if Veil Guardian's trying to teleport you, you use skill 3 and then the blues appear right under you and you can't really dodge them anymore. That's really unfortunate, but it's very fun to use. And it's about as good as the auto attack, so if you have the energy for it, you know, feel free. The main thing about sword is that the auto attacks are pretty decent, so that's why you mainly see sword. But there is the great sword as well, which some people enjoy more. The cooldowns are a bit wonky; they don't really line up too much with the auto attack chain, but the skills are pretty cool. And skill 5 is like the main thing about the weapon. You have all these like tiny exploding, I don't know what to call them, and this means the weapon kind of scales with the hitbox size. So you'll see all of these like explosions around the golem that didn't hit at all, which is unfortunate because otherwise it would be pretty good. You have a few guaranteed impacts, and the rest will just completely miss if they feel like it. So on a huge golem, this would be much better, but on a tiny target and like tiny raid bosses, you usually just want to use sword. But you can use both weapon sets, of course. There is a reason why you might not want to use both, which is none of these skills deal any breakbar damage whatsoever. So if you actually want to CC things, you can't actually have both sets, because like your one Herald elite skill isn't really going to cut it most of the time. So that's why we have Staff, which is mainly like a healing focus weapon, because when you auto attack, you'll have like a bunch of healing around you. You have healing on skill 2, you have healing on skill 4, so it's mainly like the healing weapon. But their skill 5 is like the main breakbar damage tool for Revenant. So you'll usually see this recommended on a power build because you just charge through your target and it's like a constant knockback, and it can deal a ton of breakbar damage. If you play Rev in Fractals, for example, you can use like the special action on Shattered Observatory to like lock you in place while you're using the skill, and you can hit all of the knockbacks on the target, and that'll just like nuke or explore immediately, which is really fun.
So you like
the only
cast 5 and then immediately cast.
Yeah,
your
so
special
you
action
press
key?
5 and then you cast special action, and you'll stop moving entirely, and you'll just
That's so
stay in the
nice.
hitbox and break the bar immediately. I wish I could show you right now because it's really fun. But that's a really
sounds
good
amazing.
application of the skill. You can kind of do it on Sabir too, because the special action will also teleport you and like lock you in place briefly, but you'll still like fly through the boss. So it can be a bit risky to use this on Sabir because you might fly into the tornado. But it's very good to time it a bit with like a teleport if you have a special action teleport or jump or whatever that doesn't interrupt it, because near the end of the cast is where you have most of the hits because you kind of slow down as you go. So whenever you're using this on a normal target, you might want to like step back a bit so that you hit most of the hits like on the end of the cast. But that's basically why you have a staff on the build pages. It's not really for damage. It's not terrible for damage, but it's not really good either. If you end up having to stay on staff a bit because you wanted to use your CC skill, you just use skill 2 and auto attacks until you can swap. And that's about it. But it's generally like a decent damage loss to have staff in the first place. So, if you're lucky enough to have someone in your squad who really enjoys breaking those bars, then maybe you can go swords and greatsword and have a bit more fun. But yeah, staff is really good. You use it on power builds because they don't really have any other CC skills. And you have it on your healer build, of course, because it's healing and you need to carry. So yeah. You can use it on a Condi build, but generally you probably shouldn't, because Condi builds really rely on the on sigils and having multiple weapon sets to deal damage. So I wouldn't really recommend that. But we can look at the Condi builds too. Condi weapons. So the core skills are kind of tied to Malik's. Let's see, we have Malik's here. There's the mace skills and the offhand axe. You don't have 2 maces for some reason. So all of these kind of just do burning and torment and stuff, and they're all kind of good. You might not want to use skill 4 because it's like a teleport and it spins you through the target. I have used this on the Deimos chains before and immediately fallen off the platform. Wouldn't recommend. But like skill 5 is really good, skill 2 is really good, skill 3 is like a leap, but it's also really good. So you just use everything as much as you can. And then on short bow, it's kind of the same thing, honestly. They're all like, one is ground target, the rest are projectiles. Skill 5 you don't necessarily use because it's not a ton of damage, but it's a CC skill, so you can decide if you want to use it for damage or save it. But generally, like, all of the skills just do a lot of damage, so you just want to use them all. So to deal with CC on a Condi build, you might want to consider saving your skill 5 on each weapon set, because this is like a pull and this is a knockdown. So my window got resized there. Sorry. Right. Stop attacking. The Condi builds are Condi weapons are pretty straightforward because they're all ideal damage, press me. Yeah. What you will see on a Condi build though with Malik's, especially, is you have this pulsing AoE. So you can see these lines coming out, and whenever you use a skill, it'll the line will be amplified. And you'll see multiple projectiles. They're very difficult to see, but there's a few of them on the next cast coming out. This is kind of why you want to optimize whenever you're in this stance. You kind of want to use a skill that costs energy, and then use an auto attack, and then it'll give you an empowered pulse, and then use another skill that costs energy. So you kind of weave an auto attack in between the skills to get more torment from your upkeep skill. But this is kind of complicated, and it's very difficult to do consistently without canceling auto attacks. But that's the key to a lot of Condi builds, is you use a skill, you auto attack, you use a skill, you auto attack, and so on. But you don't have to necessarily. It's better to just use the skills than not to use the skills, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, on Condi you want to keep swapping between the weapons as much as possible. And as we talked about on the Condi trait lines, you have all these you deal damage on legend swap and such. So this trait and the minor trait too, of course, and the Song of the Mists on invocation. You basically just keep swapping legends and weapons. And I did mention at the start of the stream that on Revenant, whenever you swap a legend, you also proc a sigil. So this is a big thing about Revenant, is you'll usually see a Geomancy and Doom. I don't have that on this set. You'll usually see Sigil of Geomancy and Doom on Condi builds every time, because you will, when you're in combat and you legend swap, you'll proc the Sigil and you'll see the Geomancy Sigil there, even though I didn't swap off the weapon. So then I can continue on my other weapon set after I swap off the weapon, and then let's say I have Doom Sigil on now, and once the once the weapon swap cooldown is like once the weapon swap is off cooldown, I can swap legends, proc the Doom Sigil, then I can swap back to my mace and proc the Geo Sigil again. So you practically get twice as many sigil procs as like any normal class would get. It might be a bit convoluted, but essentially like they gain double value on Revenant because you can time the legend and weapon swaps in such a manner that you proc it twice. But if you weapon swap before you legend swap, you essentially don't get that at all. So that's one thing to be aware about, I guess.
I feel energized.
I can put on something with a better visual and show you. So legend swap, hydro, geo, and then weapon swap, I get the hydro sigil. And then we just need to wait because you're gonna reset these cooldowns. If I legend swap now, I won't get it because it's still on cooldown. But now I can legend swap. It'll proc the hydro, and then I can swap weapons. It'll proc the geo again.
That feels better.
So you essentially proc that twice. Instead of every 20 seconds, which it would be normally, you swap it, you proc it every 10 seconds, which is pretty nice. So that's like why you'll see these sigils on colony builds on Revenant every time, because they're really good value. And then there is a couple of weapons we didn't mention, which is on the like a healing focused build. You might see like a shield and a scepter. The scepter is pretty new. If there was a wet noodle skin, I would use it because it hits like a wet noodle. It deals very little damage, so like don't expect to use this on any damaging build whatsoever. But this has ally targeting. I don't have any allies right now, I think. But
Feels better.
yeah, it doesn't work. You can essentially put barrier on your allies. You can put like a tether on your allies to give them boons. You can also use it on the golem, but the tether doesn't show on the golem for some reason.
That's interesting. Yeah, you can't tether the NPC next to the.
I don't think I can.
Aw.
That's yeah. Oh well. So you can't see the tether, but there is a tether when you have an ally. Maybe the rats work. It's tethered to the rat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
There
There's
we
the tether.
go. There's the tether.
We're applying connies to it, but it's not killing it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the scepter has ally targeting, and it'll give you different effects based on if it's an ally or enemy. So on allies, you can give them barrier, you can give them boons. And on enemies, you deal damage, and it also gives barrier just around the enemy target. And you can use the tether on an enemy to give them like conditions like vulnerability and cripple, and give them a bad time. I don't think anything in PvE really cares though. But if you use it on other players, they will definitely be sad. And then if you have the tether going for a bit, you can disable the tether if you want, but once it's hit enough times,
I feel
you
energized.
get like a flip skill for a brief amount of time. And if it's on an enemy, you can pull them to you, which is like a bit of CC. If it's on an ally, you can teleport to them, and it'll give a bunch of more extra barrier. If only I could show you. But it doesn't work on any NPCs here. That's fine though. Essentially, when you use Scepter, you just put this on an ally at the start of the fight, and then after the fight has started, you don't really care too much. But it really helps ramp up boons really quickly. So it's very nice on Healer Herald, because that's usually what Herald struggles with, like the initial boon ramp up. But as we looked at, like once you have the boons, Herald just keeps them up like constantly. So it's rather easy to maintain boons. You just want to have a good ramp up at the start, and that's what Scepter does for the most part. And then on Shield doesn't do a ton. You kind of want it on Handguide build because you have a really long block, which is good for Mind Crush. And then you have Aegis on your skill 4, which is like a projectile you can throw to allies as well. It won't give you Aegis if you throw it somewhere else, but as long as you throw it like near yourself, you'll get the Aegis.
That's kind of cool.
So that's the only Aegis source you have on a Herald. or Revenant, sorry. But you actually have access to it, which can be pretty useful.
Fury
It
rising.
just only saves you from mind crush. But yeah, that's very quickly all the weapons and how when you use them, I suppose. I do have a few like bonus things, which is a lot of people when they want to swap their legends, they click the tiny bar on top here, or they misclick. All the slot skills also have this, but like if you just right click it, you get the selection menu.
I always
So-
fucking forget about that.
Yeah, make sure you right click when you want to change a legend, otherwise you might accidentally swap and lock yourself out for 10 seconds. Because when it's on cooldown, you're not allowed to swap for some reason.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah,
It's very annoying.
so make sure you right click when you want to swap legends. You can also use this like to if you want to engage something. Let's say I want to dash in onto the golem but be on glint. I can like prepare the menu here and I can press my dash, then I can swap to glint during the dash. I'll be in glint. I'll have spent the energy in glint, but then I can swap to Shiro immediately. Which like it's very like niche, but it might come in handy sometimes. So like let's say you want to immediately like stun something, but you don't want to waste all your Shiro energy. You can use this, swap a legend in like while casting the skill, and then you'll have spent all your energy in glint, but you don't care about the energy because nothing costs energy, and then you can swap to Shiro and deal damage. So yeah, it's a fun interaction, I suppose. Playing with the UI. Yeah, and then I guess a few notes on Condi is if you're practicing a Condi build, usually like you'll press all the mace skills. The mace skill 2 has like a really egregious aftercast, so as soon as you've cast the skill, it'll take a while before your auto attack starts, essentially. So, oh well, I wasn't even close enough. It'll take a while before your auto attack starts, and you don't really want that. So what you want to do instead is just like start spamming skill 1, and it'll use the next skill a lot faster. You don't have to like use auto attack for it. You can like immediately queue the next skill, but it'll reduce the time it takes to cast your mace 2 skill by a lot. So that's like a pretty significant DPS gain, I would say. But this is like a bit more advanced, I suppose, when you're learning. Yeah, and then there is another trick you can do with Axe, which is you have the teleport and the dash through, but you can cancel the dash through if you want. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. You have to be in the air so that there's a delay before the dash happens. Because if you're in the air, you have to land first before it goes through. You can see there's like a tiny delay, and you can use that delay to queue a different skill and interrupt the dash completely. So if I just start spamming auto attack, I won't actually go through the golem. But it's a bit difficult to pull off, so I wouldn't recommend doing it like constantly. But it can be useful if you wanna, if you're playing on Ceres, for example, and you've just done a mechanic and you want to get back, but you don't want to go through because there's a wall on the other side. Maybe this is useful. I don't know. It's a neat little trick in any case. Yep. For the advanced Conley players, I suppose. And I don't know if you've noticed at all, and if you play Revenant, I'm sure you've noticed, but each of the legends you invoke here, they'll actually talk to you when you're AFK, which is a bit funny. They have like funny dialogue. So you sort of get to interact a bit with them all. I think
I do
the
like
Lion
that
Stance
about
has the most
Revenant.
dialogue. Yeah. Lion Stance is like constantly talking. It's kind of annoying, actually. I think the Renegade one is interesting though, because you can have a few items like there's some items named after Kala, like the Scorch Razor's fists. If you have this in your inventory, it'll give you like a special dialogue
What?
as well.
That's cool.
I think there's also one for Meat Pie. Yeah, so that one's pretty funny. But yeah, that's like, I guess, my overview over Revenant.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
it took a while, but you know,
No, perfect timing.
it's a whole profession, I suppose.
Yeah. Any questions from anyone? Okay, I'll give people a moment in case there's anyone who's typing
Yeah.
questions.
You definitely need to direct any questions because, you know, otherwise we have to go into reviewing these column logs. I don't think we want that.
Yeah, we're going to. Yeah, Eve, do you want us to look through your column logs? We are welcome to her logs. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, we haven't really had an opportunity to do any sort of log analysis on any of these classes before, so it might be kind of interesting to see how you kind of go through things.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, you could feel free to, I don't know if you want to stream a log that's open or I can stream a log that's open, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Then we can kind of like go through one of those because it is kind of difficult to when the first time you see one of those ARC DPS logs, and if you haven't looked at one before and you're like, like there's a lot
Yeah.
going on here.
Okay, which one should we look at?
Let's see. Do you have a preference, Eve? I think we might have a log from Jen in there too, or a couple of them. How about the?
I had one good open here, slightly good.
Do you remember which one that was?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I have my old log, both of it bench you.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a specific log, you could also just DM it to Umbra.
Yeah. Post it in the chat or something.
I need to play my Revenant more. I don't give her enough love.
Our moment has finally come.
Well, this one's Spirit of Dallas, but I don't know if it's mine. All my logs are
All your logs are what?
over a year old because I
Oh.
haven't had
Oh.
a kid in over a year.
Oh yeah, you can just pick one of the golem logs then, I guess. Any of the ones
ones
that
in
are
the-
in there
in the
in
chat?
the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, any of those should work.
It's a herald log, my specialty. That's good.
I can make one.
That too. We could have a fresh log.
I don't want to pick like a complete random one because like, what if it's the worst one?
I had where
Yeah, you could also like hit the golem with a fresh log if you want, and the bottle spit out the fresh log.
Do we get to watch the golem log happen?
at 7:47. Just first number one.
47, huh? Okay, I see it right there. That would be the second one down. Number ends in 164751.
And it's short.
Nice.
I think I got the right one. Okay. I'll have to change my screen sharing then.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Well, I guess like, well, it's not a ton to look at since it's just the first number, but I guess when I review golem logs, the first thing is like I kind of want to look at like how much time do you waste like canceling skills and stuff like that. So that's like the tab over here. You can sort by that. You can see what skills did I cancel. Usually it's just the auto attacks, which is like it's not a big deal. And this is like not a significant amount of time. Then again, it's not a full log, but you know it is worth.
Oh yeah,
noting,
I
like,
can waste way more time.
yeah. I usually make fun of a friend who keeps benching Renegade and he keeps having like so much time wasted on auto attacks, but he still gets a good number. It's like almost infuriating, but yeah. You can like primarily look at the time wasted to see if there's anything obvious, but usually it's just auto attacks. But you know, every second counts. Like every second you waste is like a second you could have dealt damage, of course. So that's like it might be one of the first things you want to look at. I would also generally look at the like the damage distribution. You could look at the different skills and compare to like the golem log on Snowcrows and see like, oh, I have this many hits of Greatsword 5. And like if it's a lot fewer, then you might notice that maybe this is like the issue. Maybe I'm missing hits on this, or maybe your death drop is like way lower on the list compared to everything else. That might mean you're not using it enough, or well, something might be wrong in any case. If the list doesn't really match. So those are like the few first things I would look at maybe. Then I obviously check if people use food, and you did, which is great. And then you can also see the cancelled auto attacks with like a red outline in the simple rotation. Usually it's not like a big deal, and they'll show up if it's like even if it's like 82 milliseconds, like here, which is like almost impossible to to avoid, because if you didn't immediately queue the next skill, this will just happen on its own, which is like it's fine. But what you can like notice, for example, is if like you swap to Shiro here and then you weapon swap. Like what if you were too slow with the weapon swapping, you would see a few auto attacks leak in. So that would be like a source of potential like DPS loss. But here you're like immediately swapping weapons, so it's pretty good. Then there's like one cancelled auto at the start because you didn't immediately press skill 2, but it's very difficult to immediately queue the skill once you swap to a new weapon set. But like this looks pretty good because you're immediately using, well, as soon as possible using skill 2 and impossible odds, and then using your damaging skills. And then I guess generally like comparing to the bench log, if that's what you're trying to like replicate, if you're using the skills in the same order and all that. So generally like the skill order looks fine here. I'm not too familiar with the Vindicator rotation, so I can't really like I can't just look at it and say like, oh, this is wrong, but like it generally looks fine. There's not really any cancels. The auto checks chains are complete, and like all that is good. What you'll see on like a Condi log very often is like the green outline on stuff. You'll usually see that on the Maze 2, like I mentioned, which means it has like an aftercast, which you can avoid. It says on the bottom here too, I guess.
Oh, so anything that, like on any log, when you see a green border,
Yeah.
that means that there's an aftercast that you could cancel, but
Yeah.
it would still be okay to, like, you'd get all the damage.
At least generally, I think.
Okay.
It means like it's fully casted, so there's potential to save time there. I think there's also like a column here for time save as well, and there is some time save in this log even. I think you save like a lot of time, for example, on skills they use right before the dodge. I heard from another player that you can save like almost half the cast time on Sword 2 if you're chaining it into a dodge or something, which is just wouldn't work on any other Revenant other than Vindicator, but it's like it's actually possible to like
So
save a lot of time.
If you do it before the dodge,
I think that's what he did, but I'm not sure if that's like the optimal way to play it generally though. But it's like there's ways to save time, I guess, is the point. And then yeah, there's not too many instant casts, but like you can also like hide the instant casts here if they're clogging up the the visuals. instant cast skills like the air sigil, which is like not too relevant to care about. You can hide that if you want. So generally, like, if you like hide instant cast, hide auto attacks, then you'll see just the primary skill cast, which is like makes you visualize better like what rotation is actually being done, and that can also help like seeing if anything is out of the ordinary, I guess. And then I would usually use the advanced rotation tab if like
Yeah, that thing's
timing
really
is an
nice.
issue. Yeah, because it shows you in how many seconds after like you've done a swap, both for legend and weapon swaps. This is like particularly useful on condi builds, for example, because time is really important there. Like as you want to be as quick as possible. It's not as important on power builds, even though you do want to be in Shiro as much as you can. So like you still want to swap as soon as possible, but you're not as dependent on swapping on time, I suppose. But that would be like a noticeable thing. Like here you're spending like almost like 16, 17 seconds in Alliance, which is probably way too much. Generally, I think the rotation wants to use the spear pretty early and then Greatsword 5 early, like use here. And then you should have it up again around the same time. So you should use spear and then Greatsword 5 again and then swap. But here you have a bit of extra time. I'm not sure quite why that is, but it might be because Greatsword 5 isn't casted like sooner, potentially. But here's like an immediate thing. Like this first Alliance loop looks pretty good, but this second one looks really bad. This one should be like preferably as short. Sorry, this isn't Alliance, this is Shiro. But it shouldn't be like too much longer. Shiro will usually be around 10 seconds, but Alliance will be like 12, 13 maybe. Sorry, did I say it was like 17? I meant like, yeah.
12 or 13.
Yeah, that's you usually want to like end it around here, I think. But the loop depends on the Greatsword 5 timing. So it, like if you use it too late early in the loop, it'll come off cooldown too late. So
So I probably should have put it before, not before,
I think so.
so before spear.
Yeah, I don't quite remember the loop for Vindicator, but I think you want to use Greatsword 5 earlier here. Not entirely sure. But essentially, it's like you're spending a lot more time than you need, I think.
Because I'm just waiting for the
Yeah. So like if you use Greatsword 5 earlier, you would be able to use it earlier and swap back to Shiro faster, for example. So
yeah, exactly.
you can also like zoom in on things like here, and you can see here's some like cancelled auto attacks, for example. It'll be like very easy to spot if something is cancelled or not. So it's a lot easier to see like skill order here, but it's like a bit more confusing to use, especially with longer golem logs, I suppose. But yeah, these are pretty nice views for like looking at rotations and finding potential issues. But usually on Revenant, it's like, did you cancel skills? Did you swap fast enough? Because everything is really tied to legend swapping. So it's like, are you being too slow? Are you wasting casts or something? Just basics like that, I suppose. And I guess for Vindicator, there might be some grind involved with you have weapon strength RNG and you have like the amount of hits you get on Greatsword 5 on a small golem. I think even a medium golem you won't get all the hits, I'm not sure. So there might be some RNG involved in the build, but generally it might just be like a speed issue. So yeah, there's different things to look at, but like generally it's just a matter of like remembering the skill order and then doing it fast enough, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's like too much else to comment on in this short log at least.
Yeah, no worries. Well,
If it was on the Renegade one, I could definitely talk for another hour about it.
is Condi Run your favorite version?
It's my favorite and my most hated because I'm really bad at it.
Yeah, I remember
I can
trying to
never
learn
I
it.
can never get the top numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can't. It's challenging to get
I mean, it's really fun, but it's difficult.
the
Yeah.
timing down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that one is extra punishing. Because if you don't do the rotation fast enough, you won't have the energy threshold,
Mhm.
and then you won't
Exactly.
get the extra energy in the next legend, and then it falls apart. So yeah,
Short bow is so much fun though.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Herald build is like a bit more approachable with
Mm-hmm.
since it uses short bow and glint. You don't really have to care too much about in timing the auto attacks and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
definitely
I'm
heard
not worried
positive
about
feedback
energy
from
as
that.
much.
Yeah. I also got complaints when we swapped that rotation because people were so used to having it in Malix.
Oh. Oh, right, because it's glint and having the short bow in Malix. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's
I know
what
what you
people are
mean.
used to. At least people
Mm-hmm.
who are used to play
Do
Condi run.
Condi
But
run, yeah. Yeah,
it,
that would be a
I
little
think it
bit weird.
inherently makes it a bit more difficult.
Yeah. Narsen. Boo. Conduran. Boo.
Arsene is the biggest Condi run hater.
Yeah.
He thinks Condi Berserker is as good or better, which is
Well,
just
of course,
completely
he's a
false.
warrior main.
Yeah. I don't know if I've even seen him play Condi.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I have either, actually. I think I usually just see him on power stuff.
Yeah.
Or heals. Boonage things.
Yeah.
Alright. Well, that we're like almost at time, and it seems like there aren't really any additional questions currently, so
Yeah.
thank
That
you
either
for
means I explained everything perfectly or everyone else fell asleep.
Yes, thank you, Umbra, for coming. Oh, Condi's dead and current guild lords too. It's not exactly very important. But yeah. Thank you, Umbra, for coming and for going over all of that with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Let's see. I can swap back to a. There. Now you see some character models, I guess. Anyhow, yeah, we have another class scheduled for next month. That's going to be Firebrand focused. That one is on.
Ooh, vibrant.
Yeah, and we're having one of the content editors. I'm trying to remember her name. Starts with an A, and I have it in the Guild Wars 2 Girls events.
Oh, Antina.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she's
Yeah,
going
she
to
loves Firebrand.
talk to us about Firebrand on the 16th, August 16th. So like a month from now.
Okay, I got to be there.
Yeah. And then I don't know what I'm doing in September yet. We haven't scheduled it that far out yet, but yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. Let's see. Let me read what Narsen's saying here. You spend hours benching C-Ren, probably my favorite rotation, super fluid. Oh, ETG RNG. Which trait is that? Embrace the darkness?
Yeah.
Embrace the darkness
Don't worry,
RNG.
it's just a code word between us renegade players that
Yeah.
instead of saying we're bad, we just say it's RNG.
It's RNG, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you again for coming. Thank you for people who came and hung out. And we'll see y'all next time.
Take care.